This is Coach Lee, and in this video, I'm going to answer the question, can your ex break up with you but still be in love with you? Take a quick second and click the subscribe button below so that you can be notified when I have more content that's helpful to your situation. And that includes relationship dynamics, attraction, marriage, mindfulness, not just breakups. So hit the subscribe button below and let's get started. So different people break up a relationship for different reasons. For some, they will only break up if they feel like that the love, the spark, that has gone. For other people, that's one of just multiple reasons that they could end a relationship. What we can know is that your ex broke up with you because they didn't see a future with you. Sometimes that can be because the relationship became boring, routine, stressful, unsafe, or because one or both of you changed. And so if they do start to feel a little bit of a drop in either attraction, or if the situation of their life changes to the point that they think the two of you will not be able to make it long term as a couple, they can go ahead and end the relationship. Some people literally play a chess game in their head with your relationship, and if they see that at some point they think for whatever reason that it's going to end, they will just say, forget this, and they'll go ahead and end the relationship. It's like cutting their losses. The very fact that they can see a potential end to the relationship actually lowers attraction a little bit for this type of person. And some people will fight that for a long time. As you've probably heard me say in other videos, this breakup did not just happen the day they broke up with you. They didn't just wake up and feel like breaking up with you that day. Usually it's been weeks, months, sometimes years where this person has been fighting with themselves on this issue. And sometimes they feel like they want to, and then they talk themselves out of it, and they talk themselves back into it. It's likely that several times they planned on breaking up with you and could not bring themselves to do it, talk themselves out of it, and the circle began again. And so when I have been able to speak to the person who did the dumping, which when I'm doing coaching calls, that makes up roughly 25% of the calls. A lot of times, after asking several questions, I can come to the conclusion that this person was in love with the person they broke up with. But they broke up with them because they projected or prophesied into the future that this would not work, and so they just wanted to end it, and then they become miserable because they really were in love with this person even when they broke up with them, which is extremely confusing because the person who's been dumped can oftentimes recognize that, and they can say, this doesn't make sense. We were in love. This person loves me. And a lot of times they'll even say, I think that this will happen. And it's because they recognize this person loves them, and so they feel like this person will talk to me, this person will want to see me, those kinds of things. And it's confusing because this person loves you, and yet they broke up with you. So I'm going to give a few examples, and you might be able to recognize these as being your own situation for your ex to break up with you. So they could have broken up with you if their parents or someone who they respected a great deal convinced them that you weren't good for them, or that the two of you would not make it. And as you've heard me say in other videos, oftentimes, especially when I speak to someone who's between the ages of 17 and 22 or there, I will find out that this person broke up with another person because they were going to go away to college somewhere, because what they could learn at this place, they just couldn't learn locally, which that's a whole other issue. But usually, spoiler alert, that's not true. But they will become convinced that this person is almost like an anchor weighing them down. And so they break up with them to go to college, when a lot of times the person who loved them would be willing to do a little bit of a long distance relationship for a temporary time and visit with them when they could, sometimes a couple times a month or holidays, talk to them a lot, and just have to put up with a long distance relationship for a little bit of time. A lot of times the person who's broken up with will say, I would have been perfectly happy to do that. But people just get it in their minds that they have to drop people to bolster their career or their education. And that's a sad state that we live in, because really those things like careers and education should be to help better our lives with people, with the people we love. That should be the whole point. It's not that we should be serving our careers and education, but we should be utilizing those things to help better the life we have with the person we love. But we have our priorities terribly misplaced. The good news is that lots of times in that situation, the person who breaks up with you because they were convinced by someone else, after time, they become worn down emotionally. They just get tired of missing you so bad, and they just finally realize this person was wrong. Maybe they were well-intentioned, wanted to help me with my education or career, but here I am getting this education wondering, what's the point if I don't have this other person who I loved? I mean, you could go get an education on Mars and not be surrounded by any human being and not have human contact ever again in your life, but you'd have a great education from Mars University or whatever, but it's pointless when you don't get to share it with the people you love. And so a lot of times, that's the person who will say, I made a mistake, can we talk? And they'll talk about getting back together, they'll do long distance, and sometimes the parents will come around and say, that's probably the right decision if you miss them and love them. Other times they still fight it. Just know that's an obstacle that will have to be overcome. But short term, you can get your ex back a lot of times in that situation because they will simply miss you and come back. First things first, get that relationship solid again, then maybe you can win over the parents. The race is long, so take it one day at a time. So another reason is that your boyfriend or your girlfriend themselves just decided this is not going to work because I need to do this for me and for my life and for my future. And it might have been very difficult for them, to the point that I've even heard some people describe that when the person was breaking up with them, they were literally shaking and tears were coming out of their eyes. But they convinced themselves that though it may hurt now, in the future, I will feel better. I will get over this, as miserable as I feel now. And so a lot of times they assume that will happen, especially if they've been through quite a few breakups before. They just feel like, it's going to hurt, but I'll get over it, which is true. However, if it's very difficult in the process because they realize they love you and they miss you, and because you're using the no contact rule, like I've explained you should do in my other videos, then usually it's so difficult they want to get back together with you because it hurts. And there would very likely be something inside of them forever that missed you and felt like it was a mistake. And so regret in that situation can become a powerful ally. Just know that using the no contact rule and some of the other strategies that I talk about, like for example in my emergency breakup kit, that's very effective. What's talked about in my kit for that type of situation, when they break up with you thinking that it will be very difficult but they'll get over it eventually. That's when you really have a very good chance of getting them back fairly quickly. Because the opposite is that they've already done the hurting. They've already mourned the relationship while they were still in the relationship with you. And in some ways, they even kind of used you to move on from it. You sort of enabled them without even knowing it, and they got to the point where they could break up with you with little remorse. However, oftentimes then, when they lose you cold turkey and they don't have contact with you at all, physical or verbal or messages on your phone, that's when they can start to miss you and want to come back to you as well, because they actually have to experience the true consequences, and it's not just conceptual. So in many situations, they really did love you, and breaking up with you was very painful. But for whatever reason, either it was to please someone, or because they felt like this person knew better what was better for them, or because they just thought that the future, based on their own projection, didn't look good with you, and so they found a way to push through it, and now they're hurting. And a person who has lived a life of delayed gratification, disappointments, or when they've had a lot of loved ones who passed away, especially when they've lost them early, they're able to be accepting of pain that they even caused themselves. And so they can break up with you thinking they will feel better, that they will get over it at some point. And that's where a cold turkey loss, that's where the brutal consequences, where you leave them alone and let them be without you, can really have an effect on them, simply because it makes it more difficult. The more you involve yourself with them and talk to them and still let them feel you in their life, that's when they get a little bit of that fix, and they can kind of stair step down to where a complete breakup is something that they can accept and that they can live with, and it won't be too painful. And so you have to really give them the brutal part as quickly as possible if you want them back. So if you truly believe that your ex is still in love with you, that's when I suggest, after a couple of months, usually 2.5 months of no contact, if there have been any of the signs that I mentioned in my video where I talk about signs that your ex still loves you, if any of those signs are present, and I will link to that video in the description below because there's quite a few and I don't have time to get into it in this video. But that's when reaching out to them after about 2.5 months can be effective. And it can be a fairly simple message. As a matter of fact, I suggest that what you do is something like this. You sit down and you remember something that connected the two of you, like an event or a very nice restaurant where you two shared a romantic evening. And if you can present it in a casual way that still triggers a memory of that, it can be powerful. For example, you could say, some friends took me out to, and then name a wonderful restaurant you two went to together. Or it could be a restaurant that reminds you of that one. And you just say something as simple as, made me think of you and smile. I hope you're doing well. That's a simple message. It's been on the internet for a while. As a matter of fact, when I was using that 15 years ago, I was kind of surprised when I started doing videos that that message was already online, where it had gotten around and other people were suggesting that message for breakups. But you show a casual reach out, and the suggestion is there that friends are taking you out, so you're social, you do have friends, and there are risks, and they realize that if you're going out, you're being around friends and in groups of people, there's a possibility someone could be interested in you and you could have interest in them, and your ex could actually wind up losing you because you're being social. So that's a good little thing for them to know without you directly pointing it out. I mean, obviously you don't want to say, I'm going out with people, some of them might be interested in me, or I might be interested in them, so you better hurry up and come back or you're going to lose me. Obviously, you wouldn't say that. I have to say that because some people will try to spell it out like that, and that appears manipulative. So don't do that. It appears like you're trying to make them jealous, which will actually drop attraction because they figure that if you're trying to make them jealous, that you want them back really badly and that you're really not in danger of moving on in the first place. The second part of the message, where it simply says, made me think of you and smile, that shows a lot of strength because some people cannot think about the other person without crying. So it would be, made me think of you and cry, but made me think of you and smile, hope you're doing well. Not a question. You're not looking for a response. You're not trying to generate a response from them. You're just stating the fact. And what's interesting is your odds of getting a response, if there's going to be a little bit of a tricky situation where the other person's not sure, your odds are better if you don't ask a question that looks like you're trying to get them to respond. But that's something that you can use if it looks like your ex is still in love with you and that your situation may be that they broke up with you while still being in love with you. Now, when and if they respond, which usually they will, try to keep the conversation light and casual, polite, show confidence. Don't carry the conversation too much. Make sure that they're the ones who are responding and even moving it on forward. Let them feel a little bit of that reservation from you. And that's where I have other videos that can tell you where to go from there, and certainly my emergency breakup kit that's linked to in the description below. Now, this is great if they've been missing you, and if you've been using no contact, then it can be a very difficult situation for them, and oftentimes they're happy to hear from you because you have not abused the situation. You haven't been contacting them and messaging them and blowing up their phone and trying to get them to talk to you, so they're not annoyed. You haven't abused that. You haven't become a stalker. You haven't made them wish you would just get out of their hair. You haven't made them wish that you would just leave them alone. And so it's a great spot in this situation. It's a great time for them to hear from you because more than likely it has been difficult and they've missed you, and you have shown that you're strong enough to move on and that there is the risk of them losing you. So they also have more value associated with you. Your value's gone up and your attraction has gone up. So it's oftentimes the perfect storm at about the 2.5 month mark. Usually you hear about the 30-day no contact rule. That's usually not enough time. The chemicals that are associated with separation anxiety actually don't reach their peak level until around day 45. And then that can last for a while, and that's when it can really become difficult for them and they really learn the value that you had in their life. And this type of situation, it's especially important for you to remember that this doesn't all have to be fixed right away, immediately, the same day. A lot of people, when the breakup has happened, the mistake they make is that they think that they have to fix it right away, that they have to do something right away, that this person is getting away from them. When the truth of the matter is that at the moment they're actually as far away from you as they're probably going to be. They can't really get any further if they got themselves to break up with you. and that really there's only upside in terms of if you stay away, emotionally speaking, because they will miss you and notice your absence, they will start moving towards you. And so it takes time. And like I've explained in other videos, it's like a cake in the oven. You take it out too early, you don't have cake, you just have mush because it's not ready. And so take heart and understand that this takes time, and you should not give in to that sense of urgency. This takes time. You can't get it fixed in a day, and time is actually part of the equation. You can't rush it. You have got to wait and let them feel these things, because if they love you, it will be difficult for them, but you have to make it difficult. And I know you don't want to hurt them, but this is not hurting them. It's letting them experience the consequences of their own actions, which is so important. In today's world, we try to spare everyone the consequences of their actions. We even try to get other people to make up and pay for the consequences of other people's actions. That doesn't teach people anything. It does not make them stand up on their own 2 feet or lie in the bed that they made. And in this situation, if you want them back, you must let them experience the consequences of their own actions. Click the subscribe button below so that you can be notified when I have more videos like this, if this video has been helpful. Now, very important thing that I need to tell you about this situation. It will probably feel very good to realize that there's a very good chance that your ex broke up with you while still being in love with you. But the temptation will be that you will feel the excitement of that and the connection that you thought was severed. You'll feel it again, and you'll want to reach out to them and you'll want to do something. Like I said, you've got to make sure you stay away. Even though it's going to be difficult, it's going to hurt. Just know, because it's difficult for you, because you love them, if they do love you, it will be difficult for them as well. And that has to happen. So keep that in mind, that if you are watching this video and you say, I think my ex is still in love with me, even though they broke up with me, and then you go watch my video that I linked to below called Signs That Your Ex Is Still in Love With You, and you say, yes, my ex shows all the signs or many of the signs, and so there's a good chance that they're in love with you, the temptation will be, because I've seen it, that you reach out early, that you think, oh, well, because they're in love with me, I'm just going to go over now. It will be an incredible reunion. We'll get back together. They'll be so happy to see me. It doesn't quite work that way, and here is why. Because if this person was in love with you, then they had to really mount a lot of strength inside of themselves to break up with you, because they believed that it was, quote, the right thing to do. And like I said, that could be because someone else convinced them, or because they looked into the future and thought that it would eventually collapse, and so they might as well, even though it's going to be difficult now, or because they've experienced difficulties in their lives before, that they were able to make themselves push through with this and break up with you. That means they're pretty tough right now to the subject of the breakup, because they've made themselves push through. And so if you go too early, you will experience that brick wall. You will experience that toughness, that even though it hurts, even though they don't want to, that they will say no, because they have already rehearsed it in their head. Any question or any conflict that you want to point out that says you two should still be together, it is very likely they have gone over it in their head. And so they already have the answer. They probably answered it several times in multiple and complex ways. And so they're way ahead of you. So don't think that just because you determined that they were still in love with you when they broke up with you, that you can just go over there and get them back because of that. It will take time for them to be so miserable without you, which requires your absence, that that's when they make action on their own. So keep that in mind. It's great news, but the timing is critical. Again, if this video was helpful, please click the subscribe button below, and there's also a link in the description where you can leave me a tip if this information was helpful. Get more information on my emergency breakup kit. It's in the description below. It's powerful. It will give you a specific and direct plan to get your ex back and guide you through a lot of this difficult time. The link is in the description below. This has been Coach Lee, and as always, thank you for watching.